Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
I got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
Hey, what's up, Mike?
How are you, Phil, and everybody out there in the listening world? Another podcast, and I'm excited today because I'm, wired up on caffeine or something, and ready to create controversy.
So let's get right into it, Mike. The first topic we're going to talk about is the Netflix documentary American Murder, Gabby Petito. Now, as soon as I saw that this was coming out, I knew we were going to talk about it this week. I was 110% sure. So I was like, let me make sure to watch this show. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason why it was so interesting to me and I wanted to talk about it was, Mike, do you remember when we were in southern Utah together?
Yes, down by Mexican Hat.
Yes. Well,
yes.
I had come from Moab the past few days, if you recall. And let me start the beginning of that trip. I started my trip to go to Overland Expo. And as I was traveling, once I got to Moab, there was some footage released. And every restaurant I went in, every TV channel, every radio station was talking about Gabby Petito. They were showing her the footage of her in Moab. That's where they were. They just had the footage of when they were stopped. But I was in Moab at the time that this was released. And it was weird because you could not escape it. I went somewhere to eat. Everyone in the restaurant was talking about it. You look at the TV channels, every channel had it. I have satellite radio. It was on every satellite radio, even channels that had nothing to do with that type of thing. So heavy coverage, right? So this has always been I don't like to use the word memorable. That sounds positive, but it's you know what I mean. It's something that's never
a significant lifetime event that you remember, particularly geographically.
Right. It happened there, and everybody was talking about it. So then I watched the documentary, and boy, was I shocked. So, Mike, I've got to tell you something. I have a relationship to this story that I want to reveal here on the channel.
Okay.
I was camping there. If they're correct on the day that she was murdered, I was camping there. Not only was I camping there, just for the audience that's listening, this is not no secret campground. I've camped there at least maybe every time I go to Overland Expo back and forth. This is like my cheat sheet camping spot. Even though a lot of people know about that camp spot, the average person that goes to the national parks doesn't know about this. This is kind of like a RV overlander's secret spot, even though it's so many people can park there.
Yeah, and I as well as you, Phil, I camped there as well. That's crazy.
But I was there when they were there, if their dates are right.
Mm-hmm.
And then
it sounds like they are right because they did most of that date tracking based on cell ping information from cell towers.
But they're also discounting some of the communications that were made back and forth to the mother. They think that it was him.
Sure.
So I leave a piece of doubt in there. And the reason I leave a piece of doubt in there is because as I was listening to the story, I'll talk about it. I'll give you an opportunity to speak first, but there were some discrepancies in the story. I have all kinds of things I want to say about this particular story.
Well, first, for those of you that are not familiar with that, which I don't know how you couldn't be familiar with the story, Basically, Gabby Petito and this Brian Laundrie dude were, quote, van lifers. So this is a little bit near and dear to me from a standpoint of this all happened while I was full-time on the road myself and traveling to many of the areas that they were heading to. Now, they were fairly new to the quote van life world, right? They had only, I think they only made it maybe 3 months, maybe 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. I think by the time this all ended,
or
less. Mm-hmm. And they basically set out from the East Coast and went out and made their way through Moab and up into Wyoming and that area, etc. And so if you're not familiar with that story, as it turns out, there's a lot of controversy, and I don't know where you want to start, Phil, because let me just start by saying one thing. I just want to get this off my chest. And you might totally disagree with me on this, but which would be interesting. I think I want to give a 2 thumbs down to Netflix's presentation of this entire thing, and I'm going to tell you why. I think they did a fairly good job of the series. The things that I did not like about it is I don't know if they're afraid of getting sued or what the deal was, but I'll tell you what, by the time you end up watching this, and it's about plus or minus, call it 3 hours, maybe it's a little less than that, but by the time you end up watching it, the one big question that you leave with at the end of all this, and I think it's a question that probably everybody is thinking still, is what in the actual fuck was the deal with his parents? And they barely addressed that thing. Those people should be taken out behind the woodshed and shot dead, because if you were to believe everything that happened, and they did include this in the series where the mom wrote him a letter that said, even if you got a body or something, I'll help you bury it. Like, these people are fucked up. And how we haven't prosecuted and hung these people out to dry, I don't know. But Netflix barely touched on this. They kind of ended the whole series, and the long and short of it is, Brian, the boyfriend, ended up killing himself in Florida. But it certainly can be easily conceived that the parents were told by him that he killed his girlfriend. They aided and abetted him.
They lawyered up. They didn't lawyer up.
They lawyered up immediately. I mean, talk about the ultimate in douchebaggery. I mean, these people wouldn't even answer a text message from, their son's girlfriend's parents. They wouldn't answer anything. Multiple people texted them. The police show up under legal advice, which, by the way, if you're familiar with this story, the attorney that was representing them also got sued in the civil lawsuit, because there was a civil lawsuit filed that they ended up settling out of court with Brian's parents, and the attorney was named on that lawsuit as crooked as shit. So, but I don't know how they let these guys off the hook, because well, I want to hear what you have to say about that. But if you're not familiar with the story, not only did they aid, abet, hide him, didn't say anything, didn't communicate, basically never cooperated with the police, and then when it comes time to all of a sudden Brian Laundrie has disappeared, they were like, as soon as they opened up the state park or whatever to outsiders, they went and they found his body within like an hour, and the police have been looking for a week. I mean, this is bullshit. Like, I mean, talk about bullshit. Oh my God.
So I want to address 2 parts of what you said on this particular part. The first thing is about Netflix being scared and everything. So everybody was addressing why aren't their parents in jail, and I can't believe they did that. So let me break that up in segments. So the first part is, throughout history, I'm a history buff, bro. Throughout history, you would have a harder time finding a parent who has not done similar actions in the similar situation. A majority of the time, and I don't mean like 51%. I mean like a major majority of the time in situations like this, the parent, regardless of how heinous your crime is, does similar things. Whatever's in there, they're capable of doing for you, they do, whether it's just a place to stay or whatever. If you talk to law enforcement about how they handle these situations, well, if Mike, if you were the person that they were a suspect of, the first thing they do is is tap your mom and dad's lines, and they surveil where your family is, because they know it is a natural thing and it is a common thing for, no matter how heinous it is, that the family usually sides with them. So everybody's acting all weird, but history shows that almost every time something like this happens, that's how family responds to it. I am not saying they're right. I'm just saying everybody's acting real naive, like
Well,
this is some one offer when it's most often the thing.
yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, Phil. However, man, did they do it poorly? I mean,
Well,
in my opinion, wow.
well, that's the second part about the legal part. Okay, a lot of people don't realize it, but it was just days before it was released that they finally reached a settlement. Everybody's thinking, uh, in my opinion, that the power was in the Petito family's hand, and it was legally, it was in the other's
Mhm.
hand. I've been keeping up with this a little bit.
Mhm.
This particular documentary is basically a retread of a documentary. If you Google, everybody has done a documentary over this over the past 3 years, and there's
Mhm.
only a few little things different in it. That is, that the parents are dressed much nicer with much nicer backgrounds. The girl's best friend finally got her skin together. Uh, things like
Yeah.
that. And there's some
They
additional,
had it. They had a little bit more footage. I think they had some
just a
additional
little.
closed circuit TV, some stuff.
But what I'm getting to is they could not move forward with that particular documentary until they got the legal stuff to straight with the Brian's
Mhm.
family.
Yeah, I
I believe
understand.
I believe that not only are they not going to ever get arrested, I also believe that they are making money. I'm sure it won't be a paper trail directly to their name. It'll be to some LLC or something like that. But I am highly confident that they are actually profiting from this documentary. I believe that's
Hmm.
part of what the settlement was. I have gotten the impression over over these years that both families are more interested in the notoriety and the money and things like that than anything else. Uh, the way the story is told is very sympathetic, and that's how the world works. When somebody dies, everything they did was right. And I'll
Hmm.
go into that a little bit more because the way they painted her is not accurate. And two people who are content
Hmm.
creators that travel, that have dated, should should pick up on some of those things. And I'll get into
Hmm.
those. I'll let you speak a little bit more, Mike.
Well, there's three major points of contention in the story in general, not just this Netflix thing. One is did or did they not act appropriately? And I'm talking about the police in Moab when they were not arrested, but when they were picked up for domestic in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been controversy over whether that they were treated correctly or so that's one controversy. The second controversy is who was the aggressor and who was the domestic violence. Was it him? Was it her? Or was it both of them? So there's a lot of discussion about that. And then the third piece of contested thing is the police in Florida. Well, and this is not just the local police. This was federal at this point. This was FBI and everybody else. How How did they let Laundry escape from the house without knowing that he left? Like that whole thing is is mind-boggling, like how he escaped, essentially, because they knew he was in the house, and then he got out and he was able to go kill himself in a swamp. So those three things. So there was some police mistakes made for sure. Definitely in Florida. And then the one in Moab, which you refer to, Phil, because that's when you were there and they were was hotly in the news, was all that video that came out of them getting into a fight and being pulled over. Somebody called in a domestic, and as it turned out, they put Brian Laundrie, the boyfriend, in a hotel that was designated for domestic violence victims, and they made her or left her to be with the van and separated them, which, by the way, if you followed the trace of the whole story, they did not follow police protocol, and they apparently got together later that night anyways, even though they weren't supposed to. But so who was the aggressor? He obviously had gotten smacked around by her. So I think that because at the end of the Netflix documentary, they insinuated pretty heavily that this was a, quote, typical case of male aggression on the female, whereas that seems to me only part of the story, because both of them were a little bit off the rocker, I think.
Thank you, bro. I thought I was going to have to bring you all on this side of the fence. Continue.
No.
Okay.
No. She was a Looney Tunes. And she obviously, look, he had injuries on his face. She scratched, she clawed, she was beating the shit out of him while he was trying to drive, swerving around. That's why they pulled him over. And so she was no innocent, quote, victim in the violence part of this. Now, I'm not justifying murder.
No,
None of this justifies murder under any way, shape, or form. Okay,
no.
let's be clear on that. But the problem is we don't actually know. We don't actually know at the point at which she died. We don't know what happened there.
And I don't even need to know what happened. I mean, even if she started it, I'm with you. What he did is wrong. So that
Correct.
is not that's not where I'm headed with this. But the
Correct.
way, but I'm reading all through this because I know content creators, and I'm picking up on all things. Like one of the big things they kept trying to say about her was he was trying to isolate her. That's why he got the van. No, pay attention. That was her dream, and she was aggressively looking for a male to go with her, not him, any male, because of her boyfriend before.
The ex-boyfriend said that.
He was like shocked. He was like, they are going on the identical trip that we talked about. So this was her dream, and
all her.
Again, ain't nothing her fault. I'm not saying it's her fault, but I see a level of manipulation in her. She was looking for somebody to manipulate to be her guardian angel to do her trip that she wanted to do.
Which, by the way, is one of the things that Netflix did do a good job of. They had a bunch of video that I had not seen prior from their cameras, and you could see some of the what was going to look like in front of Instagram, and then you saw what it was going to look like behind the scenes, and it was very manipulated, and it was all her, and you could see the tenseness, and she refers to herself as OCD and all the rest of stuff. You could see all of that. But at the same time, take it from somebody like me that is a content creator as well. I don't want to say this about dead people, but like, she wasn't good. She just wasn't good. She was never going to be a successful YouTuber or a content creator, other than the fact that arguably, and I'm not saying everything is always based on talent for sure, as you know, but other than the fact that she's cute.
Yeah.
And it was
so
a decent
when she left
couple.
him, she was gonna blow up.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is she wasn't very talented at what she was doing at all, and probably because of that, she was super frustrated. So if they were on the road, she was trying to make a YouTube video, she was trying to post Instagram. When you're not good at something, it becomes very frustrating very quick. She probably wasn't getting the results. Look, at the end of the day, she put up one YouTube video, which, by the way, has like, I don't know, 8 or 10 million views on it. But all of that is post her, unfortunately, passing away. But,
she doesn't tell a story. She just basically chronologically took a bunch of clips and put them from beginning to end.
And he was and by the way, I want to make a comment here while we're talking about this.
Go ahead.
Obviously, I have a lot of friends on the road, and I have a lot of people that I know in the overland and van life nomad communities. And this is not super unusual. Okay.
There you go.
This is not unusual, folks out there.
Not at all.
I personally know, I'm not obviously not going to name names or anything. I personally know of 3 couples that have had domestic violence issues that were in this exact same realm of trying to be out on the road and produce content. Mm-hmm. I know many people that are on the road that are super frustrated and are trying to produce content. And I could tell you firsthand from being somebody that has been on the road for more than 5 years, it is stressful. There are stressful elements to this thing. And if you think for a second that you're going to go on and it's going to be a fairy tale of Instagram and beautiful sunsets and whatnot, particularly of a young couple like this has never done it, probably underfunded and everything else. They've put the cart before the horse. It's going to be a disaster train wreck. So when I heard about this, I remember being on the road at the time. When I heard about this story, there was not one shred of me that was surprised about hearing about this.
Mike, I liken this to comic book hero movies. There's this archetype story that they have, and they use it over and over again. And it's the same thing with this. I've seen this same exact, other than the murder part, I have seen the same exact story where either the male or the female is totally wanting to travel and do this content creating thing, and the spouse is less enthused, or the boyfriend or girlfriend, significant other, whatever you want to call it, is less enthused.
That's almost every time, by the way. Yes. I've had friends that have come by here, and I'm not going to name names, that I've seen even this season here, where there is a couple traveling on the road, and it's very clear to me that one of them is excited about media content and the other one is not. And I'm going to tell you, that comes across as a viewer. Now I'm putting my viewer hat on rather than my creator hat. It comes across as weird to the viewer, because it often is very awkward, because you can see through the camera and you can see one person excited, or in some cases it's so bad where the one person barely appears on camera, even though it's a couple and they're traveling together, and all you ever see is one person, whether it's the guy or the girl, but you see one person telling the story, showing you what's going on. It becomes weird.
And his facial expressions and how he responded is very similar to a lot of famous YouTubers that I see. When they show that other person, they just kind of have a little smile, like, okay, let me get through these 10 seconds in front of the camera. I know exactly what you're saying, bro.
Yeah.
Me being married but always traveling overland style alone puts me in a lot of conversations with a lot of people, especially when I go to events.
Yep.
And so this isn't something new that I'm about to say. I've had this conversation many times. What I have seen is a majority of the time, it's generally the flip. It's usually the guy, but there are women. He wants to travel, and she's either there to monitor or to sabotage. And I'll usually meet the spouse, and I'll figure out their personality, and I'll guess what route she's going to take, and I'm usually right. I have seen guys that have told me they have a 5-10 year plan to travel. All of a sudden they meet this girl, she gets pregnant. I can tell you some big names who have had their plans derailed by a significant other or a pregnancy or something like that.
Yep.
And that's
Yep. There's some
usually
really
how it
big channels
goes.
out there. Yeah.
Current.
Yep. Current. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this story hits home really close to probably many of you guys listening out there that are in the Overland community, because these people are like us, like, right? I mean, they went out and traveled and camped and lived full time in their little van, and they talked about solar and whatever, all the things that many of us are involved with, except that it ended in a murder and a suicide.
And Mike, while this is on my mind, I want to speak specifically to female travelers in these kind of situations, because they're the weaker sex. They are the one most in a dangerous situation. We have reached a point in society that we talk about all the dangers, but we've reached a point here in our society where it's become so safe that women are very comfortable challenging men in ways that they wouldn't decades before, because they had concerns.
Mm-hmm.
When you're traveling, and the Gabby thing is a good example of that, is you're away from the police, you're away from people. The things that protect you, that not just the actual,
they've been stripped away, they've been taken away,
but not even the actual protections, but the whole vibe of protection is not even there.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
That's right. Yes.
So
let me ask you this, Phil. What's your opinion on that? The quote controversy surrounding the pullover, because you started this whole conversation talking about what happened in Moab. Because, by the way, that happened. For those of you that have been to Moab, it was right there on Main Street. I mean, literally right there on Main Street in Moab. We've all been down that road a million times. What did the police act appropriately? Is my question to you. And do you see anything about that should have been done differently based on the video that they showed in this Netflix series?
Okay, so let me start way big picture. For Black folks and minorities in the world watching this show, this shit was amazing. The offhands, the nice way that they were being treated, getting taken.
By the way, that was my second question, Phil. I was going to get to the melanin thing next, but go ahead.
Getting taken to a hotel. We don't know nothing about this. This is all. This is some new stuff. This is like new. Like, wow, they take people to hotels. They actually have a hotel set up to do it. Wow.
I got to admit, I was shocked by that too. I was like, what? Probably USAID paid for that. I don't know who the hell paid for that, but
so that's the first thing. Everybody don't get that kind of treatment. So that's the first thing. So sometimes privilege is the thing that gets you fucked up. So that's it. The second thing is, ain't nobody gonna like what I got to say, but if I had been one of them officers, without hindsight, without knowing what happened, being in the moment, it came off like she was a crazy motherfucker. She did some crazy stuff to him. She literally said things that correlated with his, which was shocking. I mean, she got out, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I'm the aggressor, all of that. I talked to him. There's a little discrepancies, but so little that it sounds like just like they're in front of the police and they're getting a small detail wrong.
Yeah.
So them thinking she was the aggressor, I don't think is wrong. But
well, there was proof. I mean, there was proof.
I get that, but what I'm headed to is that's the second thing. Like I'm shocked at. If I had been in a car with a woman and she had any kind of mark, it could have been an old mark. They'd have cuffed me. They'd have took me out the car and cuffed me, and I'd have went to jail. She should have got cuffed and went to jail. I know she wasn't in the wrong, okay? But I'm saying from being the officer, seeing what I see, I would have had her go to jail.
Yep.
And
I agree with you, Phil. I mean,
I
to me,
believe that
I
would have
didn't see the
shook her
cops
up.
do anything wrong. I thought the cops were beyond and above personable, and I don't think I've ever seen friendlier cops in my life. And
But that's
was
actually the problem. Stick by the
yes.
rule book. Stick by the
Agreed.
rule book.
Because I think if it was switched the other way around, that guy would have been hauled off to jail immediately.
Well,
he wasn't because
bro, I hate to get into the color thing, but
no. That was my next
away
thing,
from
Phil.
them situations a lot. I have seen a police officer observe what happened. So it ain't no discrepancy about what happened, and let the guy go.
Yeah. But in this
once.
case, I'm saying because she's a woman, I think that they took it to another level and they let her go where they shouldn't have. Because, by the way, you could easily say that the police potentially caused a further problem here because they should have put her in jail, which might have actually ended up saving her life. Quite frankly,
she had the type of personality that if she had went to jail and her parents knew about it and everything, that probably would have been the end of that trip.
Exactly, and that's my point.
So
yeah,
I fault them to the level of that somebody should have got locked up.
Well, I mean,
but that's not the argument people are having. People are having the argument that they kept saying she's the aggressor. Isn't it obvious? And I'm like, no, it was not obvious. I'm like, now that I've seen all this additional footage, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why they did that. So,
but I mean, they insinuate this at the end of the show. There was definitely some talking heads on television that were like, "Oh my God, how could they? This is a travesty against humanity." Where they put this male in a. They insinuated they took a male and they put him in a shelter, a hotel for battered women. I mean, that's kind of what they were insinuating. That this is a surprise because they took care of the guy and they accused the woman essentially. But furthermore, there was a lot of talk at the end, which is where I was getting to, is that, and let's be clear, and I think this is the truth. She's white. She's blonde. I mean, come on. This is why nothing happened.
This is why my trip to Moab, I couldn't find anything on the radio other than about this incident.
Right. For sure.
And because that's the main reason why I initially remembered it when I was in Moab. It wasn't like, oh, I'm concerned or everything. It was like, what is so special about her that they're going this over the top about it?
The one difference is in this case, you could blame, or not blame is not the right word, but you could definitely, this went nationwide largely because you had two sets of parents on her side, her mom, dad, and her two step parents that all got along for one. So there's a unique situation as it is. And they aggressively publicized this and went out to news media and flew out to Moab and flew out to Wyoming. And so this became news because, look, if I'm going to market, if I'm a marketing person and, my daughter's missing or whatever, and I'm going to start promoting this out there, and then it certainly helps when you go, I need to find this my daughter, and you give her a picture, and here's this cute blonde. There you go. Of course, the media is going to pick up on that. So that's why that went nationwide so damn fast. And the whole thing with van lifer and this whole romanticism of the social media stuff. I mean, all of those things came together, and that's why this was a big story. Because I hate to say it, and I think they brought it up in this Netflix movie, was that during that same time period on the Native American reservations in the West, I don't know, 400 people disappeared in the same time, and nobody had a Netflix series about that. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that's the bottom line. It's the truth.
And let's go a little deeper about the attractiveness thing. And I'm hoping women are listening to this, because I don't have anything against a woman using her femininity and attractiveness to get through this world. But sometimes women, they over rely on it and don't think. And this is my opinion. I think she picked a dude that she thought was a cornball that would be so infatuated with her that she could subtly manipulate throughout the time they were together. Mm-hmm. The thing about it is, when an attractive woman does that, most of the time the guy jumps through loops, and sometimes they get married and they live together forever, and they sit around campfires telling you, yeah, she didn't like me at first, but I won her over. But if he's crazy, you're going to trigger him. I believe that Brian's trigger in killing Gabby was the realization when I believe she told him flat out, I can make more money doing this alone, because the next phone call
she said it
to her mother. So I believe she told, once she told him, I have a way out, that was it. You triggered him. I've gone on this trip with you. I've invested my time. I've changed my way of life. And now you telling me how easy it is for you to dump me and go do whatever. Most men would be hurt, might be hurt for years, but they wouldn't do what he did. But what I'm saying is, it was still, I believe that was the trigger.
There's a little bit of
so what I'm saying
their
to
personalities.
So what I'm saying to the women is, if you're in a situation like that, just get out. Don't try to have a get back moment and let the person know, yeah, I don't need you and I can. No, just go. Because there are a lot of men who may not kill you, but there are a lot of men that may leave you severely injured.
Yeah, and they're both had a streaks of like narcissism or he had a dark side to him for sure. They both have the crazy
opposite
gene.
I believe he had the opposite. She was narcissistic and he was the opposite of that. He felt lesser than on multiple levels. And I've got this girl that's way out of my bracket. And I believe that's what it was. There was such a discrepancy between the two. Believe me, when they walked in places, people were like, he must be well endowed, or he must have a lot of money, or they grew up to. You ain't looking like, yeah, she saw him and got swept off her feet.
Right.
Matter of fact, in the documentary, everybody was like, yeah, everybody felt like what I was just saying.
Yeah.
He was a social misfit. You got to leave. Social misfits are social misfits for a reason.
For a reason. That's right.
And I don't want to get into the story, but you'll know what I'm talking about. Mike, we've been on a trip where we had a social misfit, and it took time for the others to realize that they should get rid of it. They were like, why is Phil so down on this dude? And then they finally, I see now, because he actually did something. You quit trying to be, you're not a social worker, you're not a psychiatrist. When you see a person is not level-headed, stop. That's my opinion.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Life's too short So for those of you that did not watch it, I do recommend watching this Netflix series. It's you won't get the time back, but it's only about 2.5 hours total, I think. And it went fast. It's a fascinating. I wasn't too thrilled in the beginning of it, so you got to kind of get maybe by the first 10 minutes of it, and then it kind of sucks you in, and you want to know. But it was interesting. I was actually surprised at how much footage they had from, actually from them. You know what I mean? So
timeline, Mike. When the murder was committed, how I used to take these trips to Overland Expo. I was headed to Overland, not west, but Mountain West.
Mm-hmm.
And I traveled through there, and I don't even want to say the name. If a person wants to make the effort to find the name, they do it. But I've been going to that camp spot for a long time.
Yep. It's a beautiful area, by the way.
It's not
amazing
a secret,
area.
even though I don't want to say the name. It's not like no secret. It ain't like you're going to get there and it's nobody going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. As you saw from the, if you've watched the footage here, you'll see that there's other people camped in there. So
yeah, but it don't show how, Mike, you've been there before.
Yeah,
it didn't show like how it really is.
No, it did not. It did not.
Because my goal has always been, I know I'm going to have to drive for about 2 miles.
Yes. Yep. To get past the riffraff. That's what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the what's happened in the last week here on the podcast. So I got 2 things I want to mention before we sign off today. One, I want to ask you, Phil. See, we're doing reverse roles. Usually you're asking me questions. Today I'm asking you questions. What is your? Let's see if we agree on this or not. Donald Trump said in the last couple of days has been calling President Zelensky of Ukraine a dictator. What's your thoughts about that?
I believe that they overstated the relationship between Donald Trump and Putin in his first presidency, but it did exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that it was always going to go down this way, that he was going to side with Putin, and he was only being friendly with the other guy because he was giving off vibes like, okay, I'll do anything, just stop shooting. So I just believe that it's going down like how it was always going to go down. We were going to side with Russia ultimately with Donald Trump in office. That's the person he has the relationship. Even when Zelensky came here a few weeks back and they were or was that before he actually became president?
I think that was actually before. That was back in the when Biden was drooling on the beach somewhere.
If you would have listened to a lot of the quotes that he had, Zelensky was talking like, yeah, I'm working with Trump, but he still was kind of distancing himself in his remarks. So it's just not no surprise to me. It makes sense. It would not have made sense for him to side with Zelensky over Putin when I've seen his history is with Putin.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think to me, the rhetoric, once again, it's Trump doing his usual saying outlandish things to get reactions. And then he usually I don't want to say he backtracks it, but he'll tune it, change it. Next thing you know, he'll be meeting with Zelensky and he'll be saying, "Oh, he's a great guy. I like to, hang out with him and whatever." But
I believe that.
Yeah. And I think it's a prelude to the setup here that I agree with you, Phil, that eventually you're going to get, look, the way that they're going to get a peace deal in place is by compromise on both sides. And a lot of that compromise is going to have to come out of Ukraine, because at the end of the day, eventually Russia will mush them.
Right. But Mike, people have got to stop saying Donald Trump just says things. I believe, like in this particular instance, he's saying stuff to let Zelensky know, you the little man in this.
Mm-hmm.
Believe
Yeah.
it's not just us that are listening to the silly things that Donald Trump says.
Yeah,
It's
that's
these
right.
other world leaders. And
Well, I also think
this is a way
yes.
for him to manipulate people. I'm trying to think of the word. I use it for
Well,
LeBron all the time. It's
I
it's
mean,
a
in this,
passive aggressive technique.
yes. In this case, a lot of it was said for the benefit of the leaders of Europe, because there's been a frustration on a lot of people that Europe has not contributed enough to this whole cause of Ukraine.
Agreed.
And a lot of this has come from if not all, has come from the United States. So I think they're putting them on notice, and so Trump is intentionally saying, "Hey, Europe, if you want to truly be on the side of Ukraine, you better put your money where your mouth is," and that's not going to happen. So, and by the way, Europe is more affected by this than we are, anyways.
But Mike, this isn't the first one. In my whole lifetime, every time there's a war, there'll be in the news how Great Britain and Europe is helping us. And it'll be like some little small team, and half the team has like that local president's son on it or something. So they ain't about to really fight. They're gonna be
right.
So they send like honorary troops. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We go in with 1,000 troops, and they said 10 guys that are going to cook in the kitchen and make food for the night. Yeah,
I remember what's the son's name? King of England, the son.
Oh, Harry.
They always
or the other one.
They would always have these photo moments of him, like
Sure.
he really out there warring.
Yeah, no. Okay, my other thing I wanted to bring up, because since we last talked, and I think we said it on the last podcast, there's been a couple more confirmations made in Donald Trump's cabinet positions, one of which is Robert Kennedy. And that is obviously I would say it's probably the most polarizing nomination, and by the way, he was confirmed. So, by the way, all of Trump's nominees have been confirmed. So
80%.
Yeah, so far, yeah. I haven't seen much out of him though. So I was actually thinking we were going to talk a little bit more about that today, but really he's been pretty quiet since he got into the position. I haven't heard anything earth-shattering that's occurred. So we'll maybe have to stay tuned for that.
I wanted to stick to boys and girls and how we interact, but we can be political about it. Do you know who Lindy Lee is?
Lindy Lee.
She's the Chinese girl that's on all the different conservative shows, who was the campaign manager for Kamala Harris.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So Lindy Lee has been on all the big conservative podcasts and news organizations. And it appears to me that conservative men have a crush on her, because nobody's asking her nothing significant. Like, why hasn't somebody yet said, you rode this out to the end? Why are you now on all these conservative shows talking shit about the Democratic Party when you supported them all the way to the end? But everybody is like, oh yeah, she's a great mind. She's a gift to the Democratic Party and all of this stuff. And I'm like, since when is a snitch and a traitor somebody? And she don't even really have nothing to offer.
Phil, the Democratic Party is a gift unto themselves. I mean, let's face it. The reason that they lost is because they.
Did you hear my question?
I heard your question. Why?
I said, do conservative men have a crush on her?
I don't know.
Nobody has asked her nothing worth a damn.
Well, so she's one of a few people that have come out and started, I'll call it playing the blame game, right? The finger pointing thing. This is why this didn't work, blah, 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 right? But that's the problem. That's what's been going on for months, if not years at this point. And that's why
it's amusing to me, because like even the cadence of her voice when she's telling you these things is like she's on the outside looking in, and she happened to discover these things. She'll be like, yes, and the Democratic Party, I couldn't believe it. They're doing this. And it'd be like, you've been involved in this for years. This has been your career ever since you graduated from school. What
Phil,
are you
answered
talking about?
You answered this question last podcast, I think. The reality right now is that Trump is so popular, and the Democratic Party has the lowest polling numbers in the history of the party. It is not cool. It's not cool to be a Democrat right now.
I get it, but why are conservatives allowing her to be cool? And
I don't know if they're allowing her to be
conservative men. It's conservative.
Well, I think so. I would argue that they're, how about go with this theory? They're allowing her to eventually sink herself, right? I mean, this is what happens.
Some of these
I don't know.
Nah.
I do want to say another thing, though. I have gotten more email and direct messages this past week about our podcast than I have gotten in a while. And I meant to address this at the top of the show today, but it's kind of like the elephant in the room. So I've been brutally attacked by a few people from the left that have said that you quote, and I meant to have it right in front of me about this is pretty close to a quote as it's going to get. You and Phil have skewed the show so far right at this point that you're not staying in the center. And I said, well, I answer all these things, and I said, well, I beg to differ on that. To be honest with you, we try to tell shit like it is. And at the end of the day, one of the responses I got was, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, I went on a rant to my Democratic friends saying, like, look, there's the reason that you guys lost. You're not listening to me, right? Remember, I went on that big long rant. The problem is they are, I feel like the liberals are so obsessed with talking points that all they do is throw. All I get, I'm going to tell you the number one thing I get is they say, Mike, you're talking about a guy that's a rapist and a felon. That's all I get. That's the only response they're able to seem to be come up with. If I say, Trump made let's use Robert Kennedy as an example as a nominee. He nominated a guy that has been, the Democrats have picked up on that. He's an anti-quote vaxxer. Whereas all of the other things about him, whether it's trying to make food healthier or some of the things that he's done in his past to, support different organizations, or his actual health in his own body and himself and things that he's overcome, all of that is out the window. I could use Elon Musk as an example. Like at this point, he's a bad guy because he's with Trump. The fact that he has invented space travel or tools to go on space travel and invented internet communication and has done all these other good things and is a bright guy. And by the way, is looking around to try to find things that we're spending money on that we shouldn't. None of that matters, right? And all they're focused on is that Donald Trump is a felon and a rapist. And I'm using that as quotes. So I have said this on the podcast, and I want to set the record straight while we're talking about this. I am not a Donald Trump fan. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but the interesting thing in our dynamic in today's society in America is if you say one thing in support of him at this point, you are immediately thrown into the bucket of deplorables, like literally, like to use that expression that came from Clinton. I don't know how to answer that question because I look at it differently. I look at it like the biggest comment that I said that set everybody on fire was that more shit has happened in the last month than I saw Biden do in his entire freaking life. And that just people's liberal heads have just blown off the top of their head. And I don't know what to tell you guys.
and they never like, let's say I was that person and I had that knee-jerk reaction that you just described. I would at least go check and be like, let me see what Biden has done before I would address you about it. And if you look at what he's done over a lifetime, he ain't done jack. And you said how they're attacking us like it's this right thing. Let me set the record straight. I am from a political Democratic family. What the heck? I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna get into the details here, but I am from the Democrats.
Yep.
I have the right to say if they doing something crazy. I have voted for Democrats.
Now, you said that on the podcast before. So this is my point. They're not listening.
For Obama twice.
Yep.
And I don't vote. But I took the time to do it. I have voted for Obama and I voted for Bill Clinton. Both times for selfish reasons. Bill Clinton, because I was in a technological industry that they were going to open up if they were in office, the internet and telecommunications and all that. I voted for Obama, and I've shown you my family was against him even running before anybody knew his name. But I voted for him so that in history, Mike, in case you didn't know it, I'm black.
I did not know that, actually, Phil.
I did not want to history when I die and they check the records and they have they be like, he didn't even vote for Obama. Yep. I done all the stuff y'all say I'm supposed to do, and it ain't worked for me. Yep. He was the worst president we ever had in my lifetime. So my point is, I've given this thing a lifetime shot and it hasn't worked. So can't nobody come to me with that. They do, but they should.
Oh, of course they do. No.
I have more eggs in the basket than most of these other people. I have actually worked on campaigns. I have actually helped a judge become a judge, an alderman become an alderman in my state. Most people are doing what we're doing, just talking. So this bothers me more than you, because I didn't vote for Trump. I don't like Trump. But if you ask me, is A or B a better choice, I'm going to pick which one is the better choice. And since our topics are about politics, I'm not going to lie. I'm not biased. I'm not for the Democrats. I'm for whoever's for America. And that's the main problem is you got to be a Republican or you got to be a Democrat. They flipped it around where your loyalty is to a party when the party's supposed to be loyal to the government and the Constitution and the people.
Amen to that.
And that's the biggest problem that the Democrats have right now is their rhetoric is constantly pejoratives toward you about you not being loyal to them. And I'm like, wait a minute. I vote you in. You need to be loyal to me and what I want. And that's why they lost. Because
that's why they're so mad at us. You just summed it up. The bottom line is Donald Trump, I'm going to say this for that 20 fucking millionth time on this podcast. Donald Trump did not win this election. The Democrats lost. Biden, look, you cannot have a senile president for 4 years that everybody, and like, look, post-election now, even his biggest allies have come out and basically said this guy was not competent. And then you go, and on top of having somebody like that, you keep him in the election too long. You finally push the guy out. And then you pick one of the most polarizing human beings on earth, who couldn't squander up 7 votes when she initially tried to run for the presidency of the United States, and you nominate, Kamala Harris. So, and then you go, geez, I don't understand why we lost. Are you kidding me, guys? Are you kidding me? Like, you can't just so Donald Trump didn't as much win as he just, the other team fucking gave it to him. And I, as much as I can rant and tell all my people that skew to the left or Democratic supporters, they're not listening. They're not listening because you know what, Phil? They're continuing to do the same thing. In the last couple of weeks, the rhetoric has heated up even more. And the more that they heat up the rhetoric against Trump right now, the worse they get. Their popularity rating is going down and down and down and down. So I'm sitting here on a podcast trying to tell you guys on the other side, what do we always say in life? If you don't like something, fix it, change it, come up with a better idea. I have not heard a single to sit here and state to me that Donald Trump is a rapist and a felon is not a solution. It is never going to solve the problem. Sorry, it's not going to solve the problem. I've got friends. I almost want to name the fucking friends that are on Facebook right now that post. I have a couple friends. You're probably going to know who the fuck I'm talking about, and if you looked at my Facebook, but I have a couple friends that literally post, and I'm not exaggerating you. They literally post 20 posts a day about how bad Donald Trump is and how many bad appointments he's made and what they're going to do and how they're going to destroy the world and blah, 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 blah. Not one solution has ever been presented that I've ever seen. And by the way, most of this bullshit is always reposts from somebody else. It's always, and I've noticed that there's only like 5 people on the liberal side at this point in the world that are creating all of the posts that everybody's just reposting. Same talking points, same bullshit. Am I ranting again? It's never, ever going to fix. If you don't like what's going on right now, you are actually making it worse.
Well, Mike, what has happened is the Democrats have put themselves in what's called textbook a moral dilemma.
Yeah.
Not a moral and an ethics dilemma, where everything that would be needed to right the ship would mean they would have to say the majority of the things we support, the sides that we have chosen on issues, now we choose the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't accept that. People will respect more, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. People respect more the person who stands on something and sticks with it, right or wrong.
Yeah,
I know that's
crazy. What's happening. But that's what's happening right now.
But what's needed is for them to be like, you know what? Everything that we think is wrong. That's really what they got to say.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
once you have battled for something for so long, it's just like if a religious person, if you gave them flat out proof that there was no God, they would not accept it right away.
No.
Because that's what you've been living and thinking all your life. And that's what's happening to the Democratic Party. They're in a moral dilemma, and then you have people who are delusional, and then you have people who I've been voting Democrat for 30 years.
Yeah. It's not going to change. I mean, and that's the problem. And really, the other reality
there has to be a new party. There has to be like a whole nother word. It can't be they have to. And here's the other part. Did you see when they elected all the new officials going forward for the DNC party?
Yeah.
And they were announcing how they were going to vote and everything.
I thought it was a Saturday Night Live cartoon, Phil, to be honest with you. I didn't even think it was fucking real.
It is one of those things that Saturday Night Live would never do. But it's
Right.
one of those. It's one of those ones where, like, do you remember when what was the lady who wore the glasses that was a Democrat that ran for president with they thought she was sexy from Alaska, was still Alaska.
No, that's Republican, Sarah Palin.
Right. It was like that moment. Do you remember when Saturday Night Live they did a skit on her and all they did was I do identically what actually happened in the interview? They can do the same thing with this. You don't have to make it funny. Just have somebody recreate that moment when they're explaining how they're voting.
I couldn't believe it. It made no sense at all.
But that's the problem. Everyone is in agreement that's in power in the Democratic Party. So that's going to remain. It would literally have to be some kind of coup and it's impossible to do the way that the party is structured. It's no way to topple the people at the top.
Well,
as long as those people
not easily. I mean, it's possible because I would argue that Donald Trump did it.
Okay,
I would argue that
how would you do it?
Well, you need a Donald Trump. The Republican Party is look at. You had the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
Bernie Sanders, and they simply did was nope. We'll take this person. That's what I'm saying.
And yep, I agree. And they screwed up. But really, Donald Trump was successful at dismantling the Republican Party because I'd argue that the Republican Party is dead and gone. It's the party of Trump at this point. It's a MAGA.
But they didn't rely on moral issues.
No,
so it's not apples to apples.
I agree. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Because if the Democrats would have been better off allowing Bernie Sanders to win.
I agree.
The mistake they made was to put their eggs behind the Hillary Clinton basket, and she look. The only person I could think of in the world that's more alienating than Kamala Harris would be Hillary Clinton. I mean, over the last 10 years, they have picked so poorly. And then they wonder, well, how come we'll end up where we are? Because people can't take it anymore. And the reality is that the people that are in the middle that really kind of hate both sides at this point are, well, what side are they leaning towards? They're leaning towards change. How do we do it different? We hate what just happened. How do we do it different? So what do I do to get a leader that isn't sitting on a beach drooling on himself? And what's the answer to that? Well, my liberal friends are going to tell you you're going to pick the felon rapist. So that's what happened. That's what we did. That's who we picked.
And what
because
also
at the end of the day, most people don't give a shit.
What also has happened, Mike, is Obama opened a lot of people's eyes. I routinely meet people who say, I never voted Democrat or whatever, but when Obama was running for office, I jumped over that fence and voted for him because I thought this was actually the first time that it was going to actually really be some change.
Open change.
People really bought into it.
Yeah, why though? Because he's a great orator.
What I'm getting to is we have in recent history where we all bought into something and you shitted on us.
Right. Yeah.
So it's going to be impossible almost. I can't see them coming back. It's going to have to be a new name and everything, bro.
I agree with you. I mean, until somebody steps up that's powerful, that has the charisma of an Obama or a Trump or somebody that is able to unite people, whether it's uniting them through chaos, like I would argue that Trump does, or uniting them like Obama did through words, because Obama was probably the best wordsmith president that we've ever seen. The problem with Obama is we went through 8 years and nothing happened really. Like he just didn't do anything. I mean, that's the reality of that. I think that's the problem.
So Mike, what actually can you give me something specific that they could do? Because this is where I'm coming from.
Okay.
They would have to say we're against abortion. They would have to say guns are okay. They would have to say all these gender issues are silly and revert back to how things used to be. They would have to say immigration is hurting the country and we should really, really tighten up on that. They would have to say that education and teachers unions roles versus parents needs to be reversed back to being in the power of parents. These are like the main things that they stand on. They would have to say I'm wrong about that and do another. How do you do that?
Well, it's hard because the reality is they're standing on the wrong side of all of those issues that you just named. They virtually have decided that they're going to stand on the wrong side of every one of the. And when I say wrong side, I mean popular opinion would tell you that they're on the wrong side of every single one of those issues by and large. Like immigration, most scholars would tell you that the reason to have a country is to protect the borders and the integrity of that country. So it doesn't take a lot of common sense to figure out that the country's number one job is to control immigration and keep secure borders. So why a Democrat would be like not willing to say we should have strong borders is, I don't even understand why. Like that's like choosing to be on the wrong side of the issue, because I don't know why.
There are some issues where if I brought up an issue to you, you may be like, I have to think about it, or you at least need to pause and weigh the matter. Most of the issues that I just ran off to you, most people have an immediate knee-jerk reaction and answer to.
Yes.
So these aren't the norm. These aren't just issues that you can reverse. These are issues where a person is going to have a knee-jerk reaction to your change to it.
Right. Well, one of the problems I think has happened in the United States because we have a two-party system is that parties have sort of decided that no matter whatever the other party says, you have to be on the opposite side.
Yeah,
like
that shit is
there are no instances of any of these issues where both parties on one issue agree. Like they don't agree on any issue.
Bro, I've seen some issues where they were on one side and then the next term the other party picked up that issue and then they changed course on their feelings about it because they agreed with that. Is crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy. And the problem is what happened right now currently, and this is what I'm trying to explain to my Democratic friends, is that over the last couple years, mostly under the later years of Biden, the Democrats, for one reason or another, have inadvertently or by choice or by bad luck or whatever, have fallen on the wrong side of all of these issues. So as all the issues shuffle down and one party goes, mine, I'm on that side, and then the other guy goes, oh, that means I'm opposite. What's happened is the Democrats have seized on the opposite, and they happen to be, if you were playing poker, they're the ones not getting the cards, right? They're not getting the turn. They're not getting the hands. And that's so they're just on the wrong side right now. Now, is that always going to be the case? No, potentially not. But right now it is, and they don't seem to realize it. And the problem is that so what they're doing is they're digging in their feet deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think all that is doing, quite frankly, is empowering Trump, empowering his allies, and quite frankly, is going to change leadership even in other countries around the world. You're going to see what's going to happen is you're going to get, I'll call them puppet Trumps, but you're going to get people that are more in line with the current Republican Trump party elected in Europe and in Asia and other places. So what you're doing is you're seeing this great world shift towards these policies. And I'm not saying let me take myself as an example. I'm not saying that's necessarily bad because I do believe that there's a lot of policies that have been put in place recently by Trump that I would say I agree with. I don't agree necessarily how he does them all the time, and some of the things he says I don't find helpful. But I think that they're like, look, getting rid of a bunch of fluff in the government and some of the stuff that has come out where we're paying millions and billions of dollars towards bullshit in other countries. I mean, yeah, I'm a taxpayer. Like I never approved of that. If you actually had put that out as a statement and said we're going to pay the chess society in Uganda, we'd all be like, no, the fuck no, we're not doing that. Or if you put it out to your average person and you said, hey, do you think we should try to ban food coloring and weird additives that Europe and Asian countries have already banned in our food and try to make America healthier? I think most people be like, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Mike, what you're addressing right now is the issue with the Democratic Party, because how can you defend that? How can you defend that?
I don't know.
It should signal to people. That's why there are different kind of there are some people who are going to be Democrat no matter what. But the people who are really paying attention, how do you defend that? They don't. They're literally going against saying we shouldn't have Doge. They're not addressing the expenditures at all. Not at all.
Nope.
They just shouldn't be looking.
Nope. And then you get these stupid memes. You get insane memes. That, well, the meme comes out and goes, well, but Trump goes to the NASCAR race and we had to pay $20 million. Well, he's our figurehead. Every president has done stuff like this. We've always paid money for them to travel to that is the dumbest argument.
That's like when you were mentioning about the mayor in LA for the fires, and you were like, she was in Africa or whatever, and I dismissed that because that's what they do. If you are mayor of a big city and you ain't going to other countries making connections, you're not doing your job. So we're talking about the president. That's part of your
That's
job.
His number one job. Number one job.
You are, and we've discussed this before, you are more a spokesperson for the country more than anything else. It's not just Americans watching, oh, he's at the NASCAR. The Taliban, everybody.
Yeah, everybody. And that's right.
That has an effect on their psyche. That has an effect on decisions they may or may not make. It's layers to this, and when a person brings up something like that, I'm like, okay, they ain't on my level. There ain't no sense even having a conversation with them.
Yep, exactly. But that's what I found is that the Democratic Party largely has dumbed down their constituents to the point at which they're nothing much more than putting out stupid memes that make no sense. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, listen to this prediction here on the podcast because we're good at predictions. If the Democrats do not come up with a savior, if they do not come up with somebody that's good, okay, not polarizing, not weird, not whatever, their argument right now is that Trump's trying to change the Constitution so he can become the president for the third time. Guess what? If most of Americans think that, look, the guys on the other side are putting up a bunch of ding-dongs, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be like, yeah, we want that guy for a third term because the other side can't come up with anybody.
So look,
that's going to happen.
I think I sent you a video about where CNN was having a round table about who is masculine in the Democratic Party.
I watched that.
I'm not going to address that, but my question is, who in the Democratic Party could they have step up? Forget about having the right policies and saying the right thing, but would have the right image to take these new ideas that we're discussing and moving them forward and changing the Democratic Party?
No one that I can think of right now. I mean, that's the honest truth. No one that I can think of right now. I think that article that you're referring to said the most masculine, most macho guy in the Democratic Party was Pete Buttigieg.
Wow.
I mean, and we laugh. We're just sitting here laughing about that. And you know, let's be clear here. I mean, that none of that should really actually matter, but it does, because you're talking about 50% of the American constituency.
Why
I can't even
shouldn't
say
that
the word now.
matter?
I'm getting so riled up. What's that?
Why shouldn't that matter?
It does. Well, it does matter, because you know you got half the population is males, you've got large land masses of the United States is what I would call conservative areas that are more inclined to follow what I'm going to call older traditions, where there's roles between a male and a female, roles between a husband and wife. And you can fight me on this all you want, and argue and say that it's not right, wrong. What it doesn't matter. I'm only giving you the news. Okay, pretend that Phil and I are Colin Jost and Shay, whatever, and we're just passing on the news here. Okay, we're not. I don't make the rules. Okay, I only make the rules when it comes to pizza.
Who are
One
you?
bite,
Are you sharp or am I sharp?
What's
you
that?
Shay, are you Shay
Oh,
or am I?
Oh, I don't know. I think we. I don't know. I want to be Colin because he's married to Scarlett Johansson, but no. But you know what I'm saying? We're just telling you this. This is what I'm trying to say. We're telling you this because, I mean, I don't know. And I want to address one more thing. Wow, I know. I see. I told you I was going to be on a rant here today, Phil. All these comments have been coming in.
Come on,
to answer your questions, because I had one guy say, "What is your fucking podcast actually about?" I thought you guys were Overland guys, and all I hear about is politics. And I guess today we talked about a big interest story and news, and I guess to answer your question, what we're talking about right now is our format. And going forward, I would say, I don't want to speak for Phil, but I would say that based on the amount of people that listen to us each and every week, and we definitely appreciate you guys for that, and all the feedback and comments that I got back and forth, I think that this is obviously needed right now. So I feel like we're doing work of what we should be doing. So I'm not saying we're not going to talk about Overland and travel and whatnot, because we do.
Spent 40 minutes talking about it today.
We did, in fairness. So we're all over the place. We're going to continue. If you do not like it, I highly suggest you unsubscribe from us and tune us out, because Phil, I don't think either one, Phil or I, are ever going to keep our mouths shut on shit.
Well, let me just say this, bro. When I first started the channel, I tried to cover every little thing about overlanding. At a certain point, it's how many more times can I tell you, just get out and do it? The vehicle that you got already is the one. Just start, get a lift and go. How many times can I tell you what's the best refrigerator? How many times can I tell you, should you get a 2.5 or a 4-inch lift? How many times can I tell you you need a first aid kit, and on and on? You get it.
I get it.
If that interests you, we have already published all types of shows about every possible subject that you could possibly think about. Not only that, I have animatronics, I have cartoons, I have whatever you want. I've got it. But at a certain point, it becomes redundant. And Mike, you may differ on this. I'm actually going to learn this live from you. But I never was focusing on the beginner audience. And most of the things that they want is for a beginner audience. Most of the people we're talking to, they already got a rig. They've been on at least one trip. They're planning for their next one. Most of the people who are listening, they ain't even in the United States. They in other countries.
Yep.
So, but they're overlanders and they want to hear about what's going on here and should they continue on with their trip? What's the vibe in America and stuff? So even when we're talking about politics, I feel like for the advanced overlanders and travelers and nomads that listen to our podcast, we are giving them exactly what they need. If I'm in the Middle East somewhere traveling, if I'm in Africa somewhere traveling, if I'm in Europe somewhere traveling, I want to know what's going on in America. That right now, this is a good overland tip for you. You can't be traveling internationally and not know what's going on internationally.
Not a good idea.
You can get fucked up.
Yeah, not a good idea. Oh, you are so right, Phil. And I would argue, I would take it a step further. If you're traveling through Africa or Asia or whatever, what happens here in the United States, right, wrong, or indifferent, definitely affects you no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, and so this is gonna sound I'm just gonna say it. The people who really follow and watch us are really actually the ones who are really out there traveling and kicking it and doing overland and retired and all of these things. Most of the people who I have gotten negative responses from, they're not really doing it. They like the idea of it. They watch all the YouTube channels and stuff like that. That's been my observation, is that the people who are really traveling, really overlanding, really nomads, they love the show.
And we appreciate that a lot. Phil, I'll let you guys go because
I'm not going to start lying to make people feel better to get you to watch.
No. And I want to leave it with you. I was looking through some of our archives. I mean, I've been on the show. You started it years ago. I've been on now for several years, and we've done hundreds of episodes together. So it's been a long road, and we appreciate all the listeners for sure.
Yeah, that's another thing. This is an OG Overland podcast channel.
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever somebody else is talking about, we done talked about it about 10 times.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have.
Bro, I remember the first time we subtly brought up something political. It was a breath of fresh air to me.
Yep.
It really was. Not because I wanted to talk politics, but because I was like, we're forcing this to be something narrow when it's really wider. How are we talking about travel and we ain't talking about the world? That don't make sense.
Yep. So now it's become the show with no fences. No fences.
Right. And I didn't just by happenstance come up with the name of this podcast in the beginning. Mike, do you know the name of the podcast?
Yeah, Random Waypoints.
Right. I know you knew. Right. Random Waypoints. It's in reference to the topics are waypoints and we'll address them randomly. So
that's right.
The very first podcast years ago, I made it clear. We're going to cover the things that you're not hearing in the overland community. We're going to cover I specifically make that statement. We're going to cover all the things ain't nobody else covering. I don't want to be repetitive. I don't want to keep saying the same thing everybody else says, or I'll just stop doing this. There's no drive to do it otherwise.
Agreed.
God damn it.
Damn. And we've won over time, so we got to let everybody go for this week, but I guarantee you there'll be more random waypoints to talk about next week.
Oh, absolutely. Bro, I got stuff that I still wanted to cover, but yeah, we're like way over. Is there anything else you want to say before we get out?
No, once again, I appreciate everybody out there listening, and stay tuned.
All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on a trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.